Hey there. Welcome back to Creepy Encounters. In today's video, lady with the orange latex gloves. Almost kidnapped by undercover cover security guard / human trafficker. I'm a woman in my late 20s who has recently decided to take my personal safety more seriously. Last winter my boyfriend got me my first handgun as a Valentine's Day present. The same one he had, as I already had a bunch of range time with it. My boyfriend and his kids and I live 20 minutes outside of town in a small cabin in Alaska, and while we're tucked away mostly by trees, we do have neighbors around us in a small neighborhood. We know most of the people who live on our loop and are familiar with everyone who takes walks around it. One morning in mid-October we found a pack of crumpled and mostly empty Newports and a couple butts scattered in our driveway. We were slightly spooked, BC no one we know smokes those, and we hadn't had any visitors. I mentioned maybe our dog had drugged them out of a neighbor's trash since he had run off a couple times recently, but my boyfriend was still suspicious of how they were arrayed. We got a little more wary but mostly shrugged it off. I was home alone a couple of mornings later and hanging around the house in my pajamas drinking coffee and thinking about doing some house chores. My puppy had been outside for a while, and at one point him running past a window in my bedroom caught my eye. He was stopped in the driveway in a very strange low stance staring. I looked toward where he was pointed and froze. There in the woods 20 feet from the house and 10 feet from my dog was a woman. The first thing I noticed were her hands. They were outstretched at her sides and adorned with orange latex gloves, like the kind mechanics wear. Next I noticed her long straight black hair, black skinny jeans and her t-shirt cut off at the shoulders. She was standing just behind a short pile of logs with her head tilted back and her eyes closed. My brain shorted. What the actual frick? She stood there undulating in weird compulsive movements that reminded me of a cat about to puke. I got my phone out and called my boyfriend twice in rapid succession with no answer, and was pulling up my camera to document, but my hands were shaking as I noticed my dog inching closer to her in curiosity. He was doing a weird back and forward dance, still in a half curious, half cautious pose. My mind was racing. Should I be videoing? Should I confront her first? Should I grab my gun? What if she was armed? What kind of drugs was she on? I realized I didn't want my pup to go near the crazy lady and knew my boyfriend would be so disappointed if I confronted an iffy situation unarmed, but I didn't have time to put pants or my holster on. I didn't want to escalate the situation unnecessarily by waving a gun around. All of these thoughts rushed through my mind in rapid succession during the few seconds while I fumbled for my camera. My pup moved even closer to her, only a couple feet away, and I made up my mind. I dropped my phone on the bed and grabbed my pistol from the top of the dresser, slid it out of its holster and pointed it down and out with my finger firmly off the trigger. I walked up to the front door and pulled it open. I stepped halfway out onto the steps with my right hand concealed behind the door. I can't for the life of me remember if I called for my dog or confronted her first, but in between every sentence I said to her I called him back to me. On the third time he listened and I ushered him inside. I called out, "Ma'am, what are you doing?" She looked up at me mildly surprised and said kinda quietly, "Nothing." I stated, "Well, you're on my property and you're behaving very strangely." I was relieved to hear my voice sounded steady. She paused for a minute then said, "No, I'm going to Val's house." "Okay, where is Val's house?" I asked, kinda trying to get an idea where she came from. She pointed at the house I was standing half outside of and said, "That's Val's house." I said very firmly, "No, this is my house." She responded with, "Okay, I'll leave." She started gathering up objects from on the ground, what looked like a red bandana, a dark sweater, and after a few seconds of watching her fumble I realized she was putting her boots on. She stumbled through the woods towards the driveway and I shut the door and ran for my phone. I got a video of her walking in wide zigzags down my driveway and the audio of my boyfriend calling me back. Later watching the video I picked up more details I hadn't noticed, like the fact that she was wearing extra tufts and a backwards baseball cap and had a full sleeve tattooed on her right arm. This was my first questionable situation since I started concealed carry, and I was super glad to know the safety training I'd pounded into my head stuck. And that I remained calm and was able to talk her into leaving. We posted the video on our local group page and one of our neighbors messaged us not long after that they found her clothes in their driveway and sent pictures. We never got any more info on who she was or who her friend Val was. I checked the woods multiple times and couldn't tell if she'd been sleeping there. I can't imagine my dog would have let her go unnoticed. I went through each shed and storage place on our property for signs of activity or anything missing, and it all looked normal, but we started locking up better after that. So, weird drugged out lady with the orange latex gloves, let's please never meet again. Or at least stay the frick off my property. Let me begin by saying this happened to me when I was 13, 7 years ago, though this story still makes me believe someone is watching over me. At this age I was beginning to dress a certain way which definitely made people think the worst of me at times. I was into cyber-goth culture, which meant goggles, masks, contact lenses, etc. The day started with a trip to the mall. I remember my mother would always warn us, especially me, that when we go there, never to steal or even go as far to keep my hands as far up and away from my pockets as possible due to my fashion sense, age, and that I'm an Aboriginal person of color, which makes me either a target for racial profiling. So my mother and my little brother go to the GameStop, and 5 stories down is the pharmacy. Right next to the pharmacy is the door to the parking area. So I and my little cousin, who had to be 10 to 11 years old, walk from GameStop to the pharmacy. We pass the sock which is right next to the pharmacy, and I happen to notice a man with a beard. His ethnicity seemed to be Hindu. He had brown eyes, and I know that because of how he stared as I passed. He was leaning up against the glass outside of the sock speaking to someone. We went into the pharmacy, and I remember feeling like someone was watching me. I paid for the hair dye I had gone in for, which costed around $50. We began walking back to go join my mother when that man from earlier approached from behind me. He started saying to me, "I saw what you did," repeatedly. We both tried to ignore him and just keep walking, as I assumed he was just mentally challenged. He managed to separate me from my cousin, who then started running towards GameStop. Without any explanation, he just said, "I know what I did," and he began pushing and grabbing my chest, telling me he was going to speak to me outside. I started screaming, "Somebody help me!" The mall was packed with people, and everyone just stared as he continued to assure everyone I was a criminal. At this point, that felt like forever, and I'm at the door, and the doors have these really big handles I remember gripping onto. With all of a sudden I hear Mama Bear yell, "Hey, he let's go," and completely changed his tone and says, "Yep, go see your mom," like as if I needed permission. I ran to her and tried to explain before he chimed in and said he witnessed me steal something. She believed him for a second and said, "What?" He then proceeded to pull out an empty wrapper of dental floss, to which my mother laughed, saying she doesn't even floss. I remember being like, "Yeah, I really bought $50 worth of hair dye, but in desperation stole dental floss." I remember my mom getting mad at me, saying they would use my sarcasm against me. He then told my mom I would be left off with a warning just this time, and pulled out this multi-dimensional wallet that had to have about 50 cards, which he flipped through to show very fast, then walked away and left out the door. We then went to mall security, which was no help, as they told us, "We cannot tell you if we have undercover cops here or not. Sorry, bye now." So yep, that's my first but not only close call. Let me know what you think. I'll be posting my other encounters with creeps and weirdos. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe for more real life creepy encounters around the world. See you in the next video. Bye.